So there were two moments in my life where hip hop had me deathly afraid. One was the Source Awards. The Source Awards in 1995. If you know about the Source Awards, the Source was a magazine. Actually, we called it the Hip Hop Bible, where they had reviews, articles on your favorite hip hop artist. And man, I used to collect those magazines all the time. But anyway, they had an award show because they used to always give out mics. Those was how they did their ratings. They would give out mics. So if you had 5 mics, that means you had a perfect score of an album. You had a perfect album. Anyway, so I was excited because they had the Notorious B.I.G. and Bad Boy, Puff Daddy. They had all of them performing. But also I was excited because they had Death Row Records. So Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, the Dog Pound, Lady of Rage, and of course DJ Quick had joined Death Row at that time. Excuse me. And so it was amazing just to see them perform because you never really seen what they look like as far as the artists from Death Row, like Dog Pound and all of that. So it was kind of cool to be able to see them. I mean, of course, they were in videos and stuff like that. But, to see them perform live and all of that, like, it was pretty awesome to see. So, anyway, at a certain point, the CEO of Death Row, Suge Knight, gets up and says, if nobody wants the CEO of the record label all in the videos, dancing and all this stuff, come to Death Row. Everybody's like, yay, woo. Now, the backstory is this award show is taking place in New York, right? So Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Death Row Records, they're from the West Coast. They're from California. So Suge Knight comes there and says this. Most people would assume that he was talking about Puff Daddy. And of course, that's probably what he was talking about. Because later on, Puff Daddy, who's from the East Coast, who's from New York, he's basically in his own backyard, comes out and says, that comment that was made about me, about the CEO being dancing and this and that. So he acknowledged that comment was about him. So the reason why I was afraid was because I can feel the hostility that was going on after Suge Knight made that comment. After that, you can see, you can feel just through the TV screen, like something bad was going to happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you could see that. I think they were in Brooklyn. Biggie comes out later on. He gets an award. And he's like, Brooklyn's in the house. They go crazy. So it's nothing but majority people from the East Coast there, people from New York, probably people from Brooklyn there, all just to see Biggie get his award. So Suge Knight does this. I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, you're igniting a fire, bro. You're igniting a fire. And so I'm not going to say this is where things begin with the East Coast, West Coast beef, but this definitely was something that lit it up. And then later on, in response to this, later on, the Dog Pound from Death Row Records, California, West Coast, made a song called New York, New York, which they used the hook, New York, New York, big city of dreams, and everything in New York ain't always what it seems, which is an old song. And it kind of is like them paying homage. But anyway, from the story was they was going to New York to film the video. They went to New York to film the video. Word got out, and it was on Notorious B.I.G. Biggie was on the radio, and he said, I'm not gonna say do anything to them guys, but them guys are in town. And you know what happened later on? Their trailers got shot up while they were recording the video for New York, New York. So later on, when they went back to California to finish that video, what did they do? They made models of towers and skyscrapers in New York, and they had Snoop Dogg and all of them kicking the buildings over. So this again, all and in the song, let me say this, in the song, Corrupt, the main rapper on the song, he's like, we live, baby. It was the night I served 2,000 MCs. He's talking about the Source Awards, how at the Source Awards, because he performed, how at that night, they were killed because they were killing it. Death Row, they performed and their performance was amazing. It was off the hook. Even DJ Quick came out and he had doing his diss song Dollars and Cents towards MC8, and oh my gosh. Yeah, it was an amazing performance, but oh, also precursor to that, Tupac. It was a silhouette of Tupac in the background in that performance too. By the way, because a lot of people didn't notice Tupac was getting ready to come to Death Row at that time, and he ended up going to Death Row. East Coast artist going to the West, which caused controversy too. The second time I was shook up and definitely afraid in hip hop was when Tupac dropped the diss song "Hit 'Em Up" against Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. That song, probably one of the hardest diss records ever against another rapper. But that song had me definitely afraid in hip hop because I knew that, people were talking and rumblings about East Coast, West Coast, the whole thing with that, the whole beef, you know, East versus West. And then Tupac puts out Hit 'Em Up, dissing Notorious B.I.G. I'm like, nobody's going to be able to go to California now if you're from the East Coast. And nobody's going to be going to the West Coast from the East Coast and vice versa, East Coast to the West Coast. Not going to be safe. So, and basically that's what happened, man. Like, it really happened. Like, it was hard for rappers to go to the West Coast from the East and from the East to the West without friction somewhere. And man, Tupac, his rant at the end of that was so, like, from the heart. Seemed so real, man. It was, I was like, yo, this is a dangerous time, man. It's the wild, wild West. It's a wild, wild time in hip hop, man. And, all that culminated into a lot of beefs and a lot of battles. But I was definitely shook up after I first heard Hit 'Em Up. I was like, yo, Tupac has lost his mind. He's gone crazy. And that Source Awards, man, I was like, I don't know if Dr. Dre and Snoop are going to make it out alive, man. That's why Snoop was like, you ain't got, well, I know we in the motherfucking East Coast. You ain't got no love for Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre. Let it be known then. So I'm glad, and that's the thing about it, man, with hip hop, East Coast, because it began in the East, it's a lot of bias towards the East, for a while, then all these other coasts start rising up, the West Coast, down South, and everybody else start, they were influenced by the East, but then they kind of made their own lane, made their own money, so, but yeah, there was a lot of friction in the 90s. I'm glad I survived through the 90s, I'm glad I survived unscathed through this East Coast, West Coast battling and beef. Peace.